Okay, so today I want to tell you a little bit more about this, how to make calculations and how to find some good tactical possibilities. And I will show you some of my games, because for me, it is the most easiest maybe to explain what is my thinking during the game and how do I find exactly sometimes combinations. Okay, so let me share the screen, and then can you allow me please to share the screen? Because it is disabled.
Yes, I've done that. Sorry about that. Yeah, you can share.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I will start with some of my old games when I was young, a little bit younger than now. So this game was played around 20 years ago. I was playing with white pieces, and my opponent was international master around 2400. So I am with white, and against Sicilian, at that time, in this period, maybe around 20 years ago, I had one favorite line which was not so popular, and it doesn't have a good reputation, but for me, it was very easy to play, and because the plan was quite simple to me, and I won, I don't know, many games, dozens of games, exactly with the same pattern, more or less. So this was when they play Sicilian, which is, as you know, the most popular opening against e4. And now they play Najdorf, which also is probably one of the most popular lines, along with Dragon and Sveshnikov. So probably you know that now, of course, there are plenty of possibilities. I think today the most popular is Bishop g5, but also Bishop e3. There is this English attack with Bishop e3, Queen d2, f3, castle queenside g4, g5. Also, there is the Sozin line, which was the favorite of Bobby Fischer, Bishop c4, Bishop e3, then castle, and then again f4. Also, there is the classical system with Bishop e2, Bishop e3, castle f4, which was the favorite line of Anatoly Karpov a long time ago. But I used to play the line with f4, which for the moment is okay because white can still switch to different setups with Bishop e3 and Queen d2, with Bishop e2 and Bishop e3 and castle. But my idea usually was to put the bishop on d3, which is a bit unusual because normally it is either e2, either c4. d3 was considered to be not the best square for the bishop, but for me it was okay. And then I had also a very strange looking idea to bring the knight back to f3, which looks even more stranger than bishop d3. But my plan was like this: bishop d3, knight f3, castle, and then the queen was going always to e1, and I was trying to push e5 to open the diagonal for the bishop, and I needed the knight to be on f3 so I can jump to g5 later. And with this simple pattern, actually I won really many games. But in this game, it was not exactly like this because he played knight d7. Normally, they were playing e6, sometimes c5. This move is also possible. And then I bring my knight back to f3, which is maybe not the best move objectively, because usually when, when the knight is not threatened, there is no need to move the knight. But this was simply the line which I like to play, and this was my plan. And then I bring the bishop to d3, and then I castle, and then he castled. So for the moment, everything is according to the plan. Now I play queen to e1. And if now black goes b5, what do you think now, guys, that white has to play in this position? Okay, this is the first question for you. I don't see you, but okay. I guess that you can write me in the chat box. So I think actually better is if you write your answers, maybe we can open some chat box, because otherwise if one of you says something and then the rest of you, okay, they will hear the answer and I cannot understand exactly what do you think. So maybe there is this chat button. So if you have some suggestions, if you see some good possibility for white to try to create some tactical operation and to win exactly material. So you can, when you put the message in the chat box, it could be directed either to everyone, but then everyone will see the answer, which is maybe not so great. So you can also direct it to me. So you can just choose my name from the list with all the names, and you can send the message to me directly, direct message here. Otherwise, all the others will see the answer. Okay, for the moment, there is only one suggestion from Lawrence. Let's see if the rest of you can suggest something. So we are looking for some active move, which is threatening something, and we eventually can try to win material. Okay, we have Lawrence, Miguel. So we're waiting for the others. So guys, can you tell me a little bit more about you in general? What is your strength? What is your rating? Because I don't know, obviously, anything about you. So who is the strongest here? Who has the biggest rating from this group? Maybe Dion, you can tell me until they're thinking. What can you tell me about these guys?
Okay, so in the group here, I think Lawrence and Megan Mahladze, and then Rowan. No, Ethan, actually. Ethan is also there. I think in terms of rating, Lawrence must be one of is the highest rated. And then Megan, then Ethan, then Mahladze, and then I think Rowan, and then Miguel. Miguel. Yeah. So there's 6, right? Yeah.
Okay.
The rating between, I think, 1,000 to 1,200 somewhere there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have some suggestions from okay. Most of you actually managed to find when I said maybe that you have to attack. So we are looking for a move which is attacking. Now the idea is to play e5, and of course he can take or he can move the knight somewhere. But if he moves the knight somewhere, let's say g4 or d5, I think is the best. But if he goes here, now, what do you think that is the best move exactly in this position for white? Let's see who can find. So we're looking for a move which creates a double attack. How can we attack with one piece, two pieces of our opponent? Actually, even three. It will be a triple attack. Okay, so for the moment, Megan, I don't know, Megan, okay, Uran, okay, Miguel. Ethan, your suggestion is okay in general, but there is a better move, I think. Because, okay, I gave you a hint that you have to attack 2 or 3 pieces, and there is this very good move with the queen, queen e4, which attacks the pawn, and this is the checkmate, the knight, the rook. Okay, this also works probably, bishop h7 and queen e4, but also queen g3 is interesting, but then he can take knight e5 maybe, or this knight e5, actually this knight e5. When you take with the knight, he has queen d4 check, and then he takes, so queen e4, now the only thing which he can give is this check, but after you move the king, he has to defend the checkmate, which is not easy. And then you, yes, if you play queen g3, it looks like you win the knight, but first of all, okay, maybe he can give this check. And then you have to move the king, and he can play, for example, knight e3. So he's not losing. Also, he can maybe, I don't know, maybe he can take like this, but this is a bit more tricky, because if you take, this is what I thought, that maybe there is a check, and then he takes one pawn. So it's not that simple. It looks like he has to play knight h6 and then you take with the bishop, but he have these possibilities to give this check. Anyway, this is part of my plan, but he played knight c5 in the game. And now I don't have such a tactics. So I move the queen to g3, which is more or less a standard idea in this system. The queen always goes to g3, and then she's attacking on the g file, and usually the plan is either e5, either f5, and when I push f5, I want to bring the bishop after this maybe on h6. So now I think he should have taken the bishop, probably, but he moved the king to h8, which is not a big mistake, but still I think it's kind of waste of time. He could have played something more active or to develop some of his pieces. And now I decided to push the pawn forward to e5. Because here the thing is that if he takes my bishop, this will be a mistake, because now I can take not this knight, but the other knight. And in the moment, everything is equal. But since I attack the checkmate and I attack his knight, he has to defend the checkmate, so he has to take, and then I will collect the knight, and I will have extra piece. That's why he is moving the knight back. And here I managed to surprise him because I've noticed something. It looks like, okay, there is nothing major going on and everything is normal. But when you think a little bit more about the position of these knights, in the moment temporary, black is a bit cramped because the knight is blocked from the other knight. The bishop is blocked from the knight. the rook is blocked from the bishop. So there is this pattern. In order to develop the rook and the bishop and the knight, he has to take on d3, to move the other knight somewhere, and then to move the bishop, and then to move the rook. So if I stop this move knight d3, then it is very difficult to develop. So I just decided to play this strange move, bishop e2. Another reason about this is that, do you see now actually, if it was white to move, what is the threat after bishop e2? What white wants to do? Okay, so far Lawrence here managed to see it. Let's see. Yes, but what is there is one very big threat which white has in the moment. Which exactly? If you play now with white, okay, let's put it that way. What will be your next move? Okay, yes, Ethan also managed to find it. Yes, Miguel also found it. So we have to win material. And the question is, okay, when you put it that way, what can we win? In order to win material, obviously you have to attack something. What can we attack? Most of his pieces are far away from ours. The only piece which is close is his knight. So can we attack his knight and win it? We can push the pawn to b4. If we push the pawn to b4 now, this knight, actually this is what I spotted after he moved the knight back to d7, is that when I remove my bishop and I want to play b4, and now this knight doesn't have many possibilities. I thought that he will play b5. Then also I was considering to play b4 because this will force him either to go to a4, where I can just take and double his pawns, or to go back to b7. But b7 for a knight is a very, very bad square. He is blocking the bishop. He cannot go back to c5. He cannot go to d6. He cannot go to a5. Basically, he will stay here for a very, very long time. And he found some very complicated move, queen c7. So this is again maybe a question for you. What do you think now will happen if I push b4? Do you think that now b4 is winning the knight, or maybe black can somehow keep the material? What can black do after b4? Okay, let's play b4. What do you think that black can do in this case, not to lose the knight for nothing? Okay, so what are the options for black? He can move the knight, but all the squares are taken. From the other hand, if he moves the knight, his queen is going to attack my knight, but he has to be very careful where exactly he is placing the knight, because if it's a4 or e4, I'll just take it to the knight. So it has to be to b3, because he attacks the rook and he attacks the knight with the queen. So if I take his knight, he takes queen takes c3. This was his plan. That's why I have decided for the moment not to go after his knight, but I think his plan now, from black's point of view, was to play b5 and bishop to b7 and maybe b4 to attack the knight. So I wanted to stop b5, so I played a4. And now, in order to develop somehow his pieces, he has to play b6. And now already the situation is changing a little bit. Okay, this requires a little bit more difficult maybe calculation. So I will try to explain to you how was I thinking. Because in this position after b4, knight b3, of course, if I take here, then I thought that this should be okay for black, because now he's attacking the rook and the pawns. And I was wondering, okay, after knight b3, can I play the move bishop to b2? Because now I have this very long diagonal, and potentially if I move the pawn and if I just move the knight, it could be maybe some kind of checkmate, because he has to take the rook, otherwise what else to do? He loses the knight. And then I thought that maybe I can jump with the knight, I can take on d6, and it could be some checkmate. And I started to calculate this line, but I figured out that, okay, if I start now with knight to somewhere d5, let's say he takes, and then I take on d6, it looks like I'm winning, but he can play maybe queen b6. And then if I move the king, he can play bishop f6. So yeah, there are some calculations like this. I was not so sure also, maybe he can play something else. And in the end, I decided that it's not working in the moment, but because of this check queen b6. But when he played b6 already, I thought maybe I can go into the same line, b4, and now bishop to b2, because now when I jump with the knight somewhere, let's say, or first I take on d6, or let's say I take on d6, and now he can take with anything, with the bishop, for example, and then I just move the knight to somewhere. There is no queen b6, there is no queen c5, the queen is hanging, and the mate is also hanging. So this was my calculation, which is, of course, a little bit difficult, but he maybe saw it, because he played back to b7, which is better than b3. But now you can see that this knight on b7 is not so good. Also, the other knight now, they both don't have where to go. The bishop is totally blocked. The rook as well is blocked. So now I'm just developing my bishop. And I was happy overall. The only concern which I have is that the pawn on b4 could be a bit weak, because now he can take on e5, or he can go d5 and then to attack the pawn. And if I have to push the pawn forward to b5, then he will get back the control of this outpost, so he can bring the knight back to c5, and then to move the bishop to b7, the rook to c8. So slowly he will manage to develop. So he plays d5. And now I had to choose now. Of course, this is a very complicated position. So b5 is the most natural move to defend the pawn. but I wanted to attack his king because now I see that most of his pieces are very far away from his king. And now I will tell you something very important. I think when you are trying to attack and you are wondering maybe sometimes if your attack is going to be successful and you don't know what to do. The most maybe simple thing to do is to count the number of the pieces who are attacking and the number of the pieces who are defending. So let's try now to do this. If I start now to attack the king, I have the queen, I have the knight who can do something, I have the bishop who can do something. The other knight and the bishop, for the moment, maybe they're a bit far away, but still it could happen that, okay, maybe I can sacrifice something, maybe I can open a diagonal. So I have also the rook. So at least 1, 2, 3, 4, and another 2 which are very close to join the attack. Also, I have some pawns here. He has only the bishop who is defending something and the rook. So this is at least 4, maybe even more against 1 or 2, which means that the attack could be very well successful. So I decided just to leave this pawn because now temporary, like I said, his knight cannot move. So I now move the bishop to d3, and the idea is to start to attack on h7. I want to bring the knight to g5, the queen to h3 maybe, and just I don't care about this pawn, because also, actually he took the pawn, but if he doesn't take the pawn, it is very hard to give advice to black what to do, because if you try to, to find some useful move, there is no move with the knight, no move with the knight, no move with the bishop, no move with the rook, with the queen, nothing you can do. Basically, if you don't take, what to do? So he takes. And now white has many possibilities, of course. I can simply move the knight back to e2, which is maybe actually the best move objectively. And then I can play f5 and knight f4 and knight g5 and queen h4. And I will just throw 5 pieces against this king and it will be soon checkmated. But I was obsessed with the idea to attack on h7 immediately. So I was thinking about 3 possibilities. Knight g5, of course, queen to somewhere, or simply to take the pawn. Because I don't know if you have studied the combinations, but probably some of you might know about this combination. What was the name? This Trojan horse or something? Trojan. Yeah, there was some name. This combination is one of the most popular in the game. Usually the queen is on d1, and you take bishop h7 check, followed by knight g5 check, and then queen h5, and then checkmate. So this is something which everyone has to know, because it happens very often in the game that you have this possibility to take on h7 and give the check and give the check with the queen and checkmate. And now, if I play knight g5, he can play h6, for example. And then it looks very dangerous, but where is the mate? It's not clear. If I move the queen somewhere, also h6, and then, yes, it's good, but there is no some follow-up. And then he can play knight c5 and to exchange the bishop. So I was thinking about this idea, bishop takes h7, but you need to calculate it very well. Actually, I was thinking about this sacrifice ever since I played b4, because I could see that this would happen. Bishop b2, bishop d3, and I thought when I bring the bishop back, I have to sacrifice it. So I stop h6, and then I have knight g5 check, I have queen h4, I have queen h7, and then it should be mate. But I tried to calculate the line until the end, and this is a very, very important to be able to calculate the lines until the end, until, of course, until you can see, and also to evaluate, after all, which can happen, in the end what is going on. And usually when the line is forced, this is easy to calculate because there are only one move, so there are not so many deviations. So for example, we take, if he doesn't take, okay, maybe he can take the knight, but then we move the queen to h3, for example, and we want to play bishop to g6 and checkmate. So he has to take. Then we give check, okay. He has to go here. Then we move the queen somewhere. We want to give checkmate. So the only defense against the checkmate is that he has to move the rook to make space for the king to run that way. So he has to move the rook to e8. And this is the difference, because normally when you have knight g5, if the queen is on h5, this is a forced checkmate, because if you ever move the rook, you play queen f7 check, then you go back, and then you go check on h7, check on h8, and queen g7 is made. But now my queen is not on h5, which is a problem, but she is on h4 and h3. So when he moves the rook to e8, and when I give, I don't have this queen f7 check. I have to give queen h7, king f8, queen h8 check, and the king goes to e7. And I can take on g7, but already his king maybe can try to go here. The knight is hanging. He can try to defend with the rook f8. So this line is not very clear. So probably I should have just played maybe knight e2. But in the end, I decided to go for this line because it was in my mind and I wanted to deliver some beautiful checkmate with a lot of sacrifices. So I take on h7. And now, so far, it's according to my plan. He has to take, I go here, he goes here, I go with the queen, and he moves the rook. Everything is, this is normal. And now, probably I should have think more because I didn't play the best moves here. But the best move is actually, it's not that difficult, but it's not that easy. So let me ask you, okay, maybe some of you can try to find it. What do you think now is the best move for white? We are a piece down, but we have to try to deliver some checkmate in a few moves, but not in one or two. Unfortunately, it's a little bit longer, or it's more complicated. Okay, yes, there are a couple of ideas already. Another thing which is very important in general, when you try to calculate in such a sharp positions, of course, it's good to find some ideas for you, how to attack, how to give checkmate or win material, but also you have to look ideally from the defending's point of view, how can he try to defend? Because if you look only your ideas, you can miss sometimes that he can do something good to stop your plan. So another way of thinking is, okay, let's say if you play with black, what can you do to defend if now white doesn't play something which is check in one move, but if you want to improve, does he have resources, enough resources to bring more defenders close to his king, or you have time to bring more attackers? This is like when you play these games of war. You can try to bring more reinforcements to continue the attack, but also he can bring more defenders. And then you just have to see who is arriving first to the battlefield, your pieces or his pieces. Yes, so far we have 4 ideas: f5, rook f3, queen h7, and queen h5. And all of them are looking interesting. I have played in the game, which we'll see, queen h7 check. Rook f3 is actually very interesting move because you defend the knight on c3 and you want to go to h3. But okay, let's try to analyze now from Black's point of view. Obviously, okay, the idea is rook h3 and then queen h8. So what can Black do? Can he try to prevent some of those checks and to defend his king? It looks like his pieces are too far away, but maybe he can try to bring some defenders. He can either bring the knight, the bishop, okay, with the bishop, okay, he can give some checks, but those checks, they don't change. Someone is writing, how do you write on my board? We have some, painter here. I don't know how do you do it, but either the knight you do, either the bishop goes somewhere. I think better is to move the knight because he is defending. So he is defending now this h7. But from the other hand, okay. So from the other hand, after rook h3, can now Black prevent the checkmate, or he's just losing? So now White wants to give queen h8 mate. Do you think that Black can defend? Okay, for the moment only. Yeah, okay, so there are a few people who saw. Okay, there is only one defense because sometimes you can try to push f6 and to escape with the king, but now, since the knight is defending f7, it's impossible. But knight g6 is actually defending h8. And then you have one check, but the point is that this knight has moved to g6, and now he's protecting h8, and actually the move rook to go with the rook to h3 in the end didn't bring nothing. So now White is just losing. So it's tempting, but if Black find this idea, you can lose the game. The move f5 actually is very good, but I didn't play this move. It's very complicated, by the way, because there are many deviations which you have to consider, like bishop takes, like bishop check, like pawn takes, like knight takes, like queen takes. But apparently it was a good move, and the point is that if Black now goes knight f8, it seems that now Black is defending everything and now he should be winning, but now White has this move f6. But it is quite difficult to find this idea because it's not so forced, and there are many deviations, but in the end, the point is that if he plays the pawn, you have queen h6. Otherwise, if he moves the knight, there is queen h7. And if he doesn't do anything, you want to take on g7. And then when he takes, you can bring the rook to f3, but it's a bit more complicated. So I couldn't find this. I played queen h7. He moved the king to f8. I don't know if you can remove those this blue thing from the board because I don't know how to do it. And now again, by the way, there was a very crazy move which I didn't see, but it was really computer line. Now the computer says that white should play f5, which is again a very complicated move because there are many options for black. Bishop c3 again, knight e5, pawn takes f5, queen e5, queen c5, bishop c5 check. So you have to ideally calculate all of those lines and to see what is going on. For example, here the point in one of those lines is that you go f6, which is crazy move because it looks like now after pawn takes, this is just losing for white. But now he finds some incredible move, knight b5. Okay, this is of course, I show you because it's very difficult even for a grandmaster to find such a line. And in the end, the point is that after bishop e5, he cannot take the bishop because if he takes with the queen has to guard f7. If he takes the pawn, rook f7, but okay, this is too complicated even for me, so I just give this check. And then in my calculations, when I have sacrificed the bishop on h7, I reach to this position. And I was not actually sure if this is winning or not, because I couldn't see exactly if there is a checkmate. But I just felt that there has to be something. Although now actually black is fine and he could defend, but it's also not easy for black to find what to do. He found now the best move, bishop c3. He just took the knight. This was the move which I was afraid of the most, because now I'm with 2 pieces down. And if there is no mate, I will just lose the game. So I was wondering what to do. There are not so many options, by the way, because the bishop is hanging. If I give the check, yeah, he can just move the knight. So it's not nothing special. So probably I have to take at some point, or I have to give check. If I give check with the queen, of course, he has to go here. I can give check with a knight. He has to take. I have to take, and then he has to take, he will take my bishop. So better is first to exchange the bishop, at least not to lose another piece. And this happened in the game. And now, again, I'm with 2 pieces down. So what do you suggest now for white? Queen f7, knight f7, f5 or something? I don't know. Do you have some good ideas for white? How to continue with the attack? Yes, okay. Is better. So guys, in such situations, when you have more or less 2 possibilities, you have to try to calculate not only the next move, but also the second move, and if you can, the third, the fourth, because it is very important to pick up the better move. If you just think, okay, I have to play something and then I will see what will happen, you might guess, but you might make the wrong choice. So ideally, I think in this situation it's easy to to see the second move because, for example, if we take Queen F7, he has only one move. So you have to think, okay, what next? Now you can take Knight E6, maybe check, which is almost like a mate, but he can take Rook E6. And then you take with the Queen. So basically, the next three moves could be forced, which is making easier for you to calculate them. And then the thing is that you have to, when the forcing line is finishing, so this means that when you reach a stage where your opponent can play not only one move, but he can play 5 moves, then already you don't know what is going on because you cannot see everything. But you have to try to evaluate the situation until the moment. For example, in this moment, we have to evaluate, is it good for white to play Queen F7, Knight E6, and Queen E6? Because you win 2 pawns and a rook for the knight. So this is looking great. But then, what is the situation on the board? You have queen and 2 rooks and a lot of pawns. He has queen, a rook, bishop, and 2 knights. So basically, he has, okay, the queen and the rook are the same. So you have a rook, and he has 2 knights and bishop. And the 2 knights and the bishops are much stronger than the rook. From the other hand, you have 4 connected pawns, e5, f4, g2, h4. So for the endgame, let's say at some point you exchange the queens, you have 4 connected pawns, but he has 2 knights. He can play knight c5, bishop f5, the other knight against the rook. So this is very tricky because you don't know. But I thought that this is not good for me, even if I can pick up the pawn on d5. So let's say queen takes, knight takes, queen takes, and then I manage to take this pawn. But if I exchange the queens and he can bring his knights in a good positions and the bishop to block my pawn, I thought that, I don't know, 3 pieces are maybe better than the rook and the pawn. So I thought, okay, what is the alternative? Always, when you play, you must have some alternative, because if the line which you hope is not working, and then you have to find some other line which is keeping you in the game. 96, but first of all, 96 is not threatening anything. So he can take with the king, but maybe he can play something else, like knight c5, like... so I was thinking about knight f7. What is the alternative? The alternative is knight f7, because really this position, I think that, for example, he can give one check, and then he can play knight c5 to attack the queen, and then he brings the king to c7, he brings the bishop to b7, and when his king is safe, those pawns actually are not very useful for the moment, because my king is there, and he will bring the knight in the center, the bishop, the rook, and already the things are not looking very good. But of course, you must think a little bit more in advance. So I thought if I take with the knight, this looks a little bit more complicated for black, because now it's not exactly clear what is the threat, but the king is in a very bad situation, because I want to move somewhere the knight. So I thought that maybe this is more unpleasant for my opponent, because now he cannot escape so easy with the king. So I can try to bring the rooks, or to push the pawns, or to do something, and to keep his king in this, like a cage. And objectively, okay, the computer gives some good moves for black, but it's quite difficult to find what is the best move for black, because it's not clear exactly what is the threat, and you don't know against what to defend. Do I want to give this check? Do I want to move the knight? So he played maybe one of the most natural moves, knight c5. to bring the knight into the game, to jump here, to maybe to release the bishop, but still the king is, it remains in this situation. So now I have three possibilities. Always we have to, ideally, we have to pick up the candidate moves. Maybe you have heard this before. In every position, you have to think, okay, not only about one move, but for the second and maybe even for the third, if you don't see something very good, because you have to compare now. The first move, what if I play f5? Yes, what if I give check with the knight? What if I give check with the queen? So the first move, of course, on my mind was check. Always, I think you have to start with checks, because if this is working and you see some win or something good for you, then there is no point to look for something else. Okay, so if I give the check, he has to go here. Now, if I take the rook, he will simply take with the king, and then I have only one queen, but he can bring the knight to f8 and he will defend. So I thought, okay, maybe I have to give check. He goes here, then I give another check with the queen, because now if he moves the king, then his rook is not defended, so I just take it. Okay, so let's see, check here. Check with the queen, he has to move the rook to e7. So if I give another check, then he hides the king to c7, and I don't have any more checks. So maybe when my knight is on d6 and my queen is here, I can play knight f7 check. His rook is on e7 and the king is here. If he moves the king, I just collect the rook. He has to go to e8. And maybe now queen g8. It looks like a checkmate, but it's not. Imagine that my queen is on g8, his king is on e8, and the rook is on e7. He has knight f8. Then I have some check. So this is quite complicated, but it's not, I think it's not working. And I thought in the end, okay, check. I started to, again, to calculate. Okay, maybe after this I can play knight f7. He can move the king. I can play again knight d6. But if he goes back, it will be a draw. So I thought, okay, draw, is it good for me to make a draw? Because I think I had a big advantage, but now I sacrificed so many pieces, and maybe draw is not so bad, because it's better than to lose. And then I look for the alternatives. Okay, I can push f5. And I started to analyze, okay, do I risk something with the move f5? What can he do? He can take. Of course, he can play many things, but okay, I thought that maybe he can take. And then what exactly? If I take with the rook, he takes this rook. Maybe then I can give some check. I started to analyze some lines, and I pick up this move, which turned out to be, in the end, interesting, and he made some mistake. Okay, but let me show you first if I play this line, which I thought, and now knight f7, and now here. Now I have this. Yeah, I think, okay, can you do, yes, here the point is that if I give this check, and then if I give this check, and then I take the knight, yes, I won the knight, but I'm still with the piece down, and now the black king is safe, and all his pieces are active, so this is just bad. So probably I have to go here, because now already, if he goes to the f5, with f5, I will open the rook and he will lose. But when he goes back to d8, there is nothing better than the draw. But I decided to gamble a little bit, and I played f5. And it seems that this is a very dangerous move, because f6 is a very big threat. Although, according to the computer, f6 is not winning, because after knight takes f6, he can move the king, but it looks extremely dangerous. Of course, if you have computer, then everything is easy. But on the board, sometimes the threats are looking very scary. So he decided to take the pawn, which turned out to be a decisive mistake. Okay, so now let's see, can you find why this move is a mistake and what should white play? Okay, since our time is running out, I will just show you the end of the game. So I played Queen G5 check. And now what to do? He has to take the knight. So he took the knight. Then I took with the rook. And I think he had missed something. He saw this position, but he didn't see the last move in the game, which was rook f6. He thought that this is impossible, and here he resigned. Why he resigned? Because he has to take, but then after queen takes, we have queen to d6. Very, very beautiful checkmate, only with one queen against all those pieces. So I was feeling a little bit like these guys in the 19th century, Andersen and Paul Morphy, when you sacrifice everything, and in the end, it's a very beautiful checkmate. So in the end, it was a very good game, although I was a bit lucky that at some point, probably he could have defended better, but defending is even more difficult than the attacking. So yeah, he made 1-2 inaccurate moves, but it's not easy to see exactly what he should have done. Okay, guys, I hope that you have enjoyed this game and you have learned something new today. So I wish you good luck in your next tournaments, and I hope to see you again. So from me, have a nice evening, and bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dion, and see you next time also.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, everyone. So I hope that, like what the Grandmaster said, you all learned something, and hopefully you'll be able to use it in your next games and next tournaments. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you in the next group lesson as well. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and as always, keep chessing. Bye-bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.